brought to you by Soundlibra.com. You can find a direct link to our full library in the description of this audio, or visit us anytime at Soundlibra.com. Welcome to Learn Faster, Remember More. Let's begin our journey to unlock your brain's incredible potential.
I'm so excited, Alex. Just a quick heads up for everyone before we dive in. While we're talking about effective study habits, this is an unofficial guide and isn't intended to be a replacement for any official school or certification study materials.
Great point, Lisa. For so long, learning felt like a chore, like trying to stuff information into a brain that just wasn't built for it. But what you're saying is that our brains are actually amazing learning machines, and we can tap into that power. Exactly. Our brains are incredibly plastic, meaning they can change and adapt throughout our lives. Think of your brain like a muscle. The more you exercise in the right ways, the stronger and more capable it becomes. The common approach to learning, which often involves passive reading and rereading, doesn't effectively build those learning muscles. It's like trying to get stronger by just looking at weights instead of lifting them.
That's a great analogy. So, we're talking about a revolution in how we approach learning. It's not about innate talent, but about using the right techniques.
Precisely. This series is all about equipping you with those techniques. We'll explore methods that are proven by research to boost comprehension and retention. We're not just talking about passing a test. We're talking about building deep, lasting knowledge that you can draw upon whenever you need it.
So, what's the big secret? What makes these smarter techniques so effective?
The core philosophy behind learning smarter, not harder, is to engage your brain more actively and efficiently. Instead of simply consuming information, we want to actively retrieve it, process it, and connect it to what you already know. This requires a shift from passive study habits to active learning strategies.
Active learning. I hear that term a lot, but what does it really mean in practice?
It means moving beyond just reading a chapter or listening to a lecture. Active learning involves actively engaging with the material. This could be by asking yourself questions, summarizing in your own words, teaching it to someone else, or testing yourself. We'll be exploring specific methods for all of these.
And this is all backed by science, not just opinions or trends.
Absolutely. Decades of research in cognitive psychology, neuroscience, and education have illuminated how we learn best. These aren't just theories. They're data-driven strategies that have been tested and refined. We're going to demystify them and make them accessible for everyone. Imagine being able to learn a new language, master a complex subject, or pick up a new skill much faster and with greater confidence. That's the promise of learning smarter.
It sounds incredibly powerful. So, are we talking about changing the way we study for exams, or is this a broader life skill?
It's definitely a broader life skill. While these techniques will undoubtedly help you excel in academic settings, their true value lies in their application to lifelong learning. In today's rapidly changing world, the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn is crucial. Whether you're advancing your career, pursuing a new hobby, or simply staying curious about the world, these strategies will serve you well.
That's so important. We're not in school forever, but learning should be a pursuit for life. So, what kind of specific techniques can listeners expect to learn about in this series?
This first episode sets the stage, introducing the why behind learning smarter. In the upcoming episodes, we'll dive into the how. We'll explore powerful techniques like active recall, which is all about pulling information out of your brain rather than just pushing it in.
Active recall, so like quizzing yourself?
Exactly. We'll show you how to do it effectively. Then, we'll tackle spaced repetition. This is a scientifically proven method to combat forgetting by reviewing information at just the right intervals. It sounds simple, but when done correctly, it's incredibly powerful for long-term memory.
Spaced repetition, so it's not just cramming the night before?
Definitely not. Cramming is an exercise in short-term memory, and often the information vanishes as quickly as it appears. Spaced repetition is about building durable knowledge. We'll also explore interleaving, which is the art of mixing up different subjects or skills during your study sessions.
Mixing it up? That sounds counterintuitive. I always thought you should focus on one thing until you've mastered it.
It has seemed counterintuitive at first glance, doesn't it? But research shows that interleaving, when applied appropriately, leads to deeper understanding and the ability to transfer knowledge to new situations. We can't cover everything today, but we'll dedicate an episode to breaking down these concepts.
This is fascinating. It feels like we're uncovering a whole new way to approach learning that's much more effective and, dare I say, enjoyable.
That's the goal, Lisa. We want to make learning feel less like a struggle and more like an exciting exploration. We'll also delve into elaboration, which means explaining concepts in your own words and connecting them to your existing knowledge, and using concrete examples to make abstract ideas stick.
And I remember you mentioning something about visuals and words working together.
Ah, yes, that's dual coding. We'll explore how combining visual information with verbal information can create stronger memory traces. Imagine learning about the solar system not just by reading about the planets, but by also looking at diagrams and mapping their orbits. That's dual coding in action.
Wow. So we've got active recall, spaced repetition, interleaving, elaboration, concrete examples, and dual coding. That's a lot to digest, but it all seems to point towards a more brain-friendly way of learning.
It does. And the beauty of these techniques is that they work synergistically. They build upon each other. While each episode will focus on a particular technique, we'll encourage you to see how they can be woven together into a cohesive learning system.
So, to recap what we've covered today in this first episode, our brains are capable of amazing learning, but traditional study methods often fall short. The key is to adopt smarter learning strategies that actively engage our brains. We're moving from passive consumption to active retrieval and processing.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. We've laid the groundwork for understanding why learning smarter is not just beneficial, but essential in today's world. We've introduced the core idea that by understanding how our brains learn best, we can dramatically improve our ability to acquire and retain knowledge.
And in the next episode, we're going to dive straight into one of the most powerful techniques, active recall. I can't wait.
Me neither. It's a game changer. So, are you ready to start learning faster and remembering more?
Absolutely.
Great. Join us next time as we unlock the power of active recall. Next episode, Unlocking Your Brain's Potential, the Power of Active Recall. Welcome back to Learn Faster, Remember More. Last time, we explored why we need to learn smarter. Now, let's tackle our first powerhouse technique, active recall.
Active recall. It sounds simple, but there's a lot more to it than just recalling things.
You're right, Lisa. At its core, active recall is retrieving information from your memory without looking at your notes or the source material. Think of it like a workout for your brain. The more you pull information out, the stronger those neural pathways become, making it easier to access that information later.
So, instead of rereading or highlighting, active recall means actively trying to pull that information back from memory. Why is this so much better than just rereading?
Great question. Rereading is passive. You're just re-exposing yourself to information. Your brain recognizes it, it feels familiar, and we think we know it well. But familiarity isn't understanding. Active recall requires effort. It's a struggle to pull that memory out. And that struggle is precisely what strengthens memory.
So, the harder it is, the better it is for learning? That feels counterintuitive.
It does. But research shows this is true. When you try to recall something and struggle, your brain flags that information as important. It's like your brain is saying, this is important. Let's make it easier to access next time. This is often called desirable difficulty in learning science.
Desirable difficulty. I like that. It makes perfect sense. So, how do we actually do active recall? What does it look like?
There are many ways. Using flashcards is simple. Write a question on one side and the answer on the other. Then, test yourself. Can you recall the answer before flipping it? Another method is to close your textbook after reading a section and try to summarize the main points in your own words, writing them down or explaining them aloud.
Okay, so flashcards summarizing. What else? Are there ways to do this without making actual flashcards?
Absolutely. Use the questions at the end of textbook chapters. You can also create your own questions as you read. Underline a key concept, then jot down a question about it in the margins. Later, use those questions to prompt your recall.
I'm picturing myself reading, then stopping, thinking up a question, and writing it down. That definitely sounds more active than just moving my eyes across the page. And what about subjects like math or history?
Excellent point. For math, instead of rereading example problems, try to solve them yourself without looking at the solution. If you get stuck, that tells you where to focus. For history, it's about recalling events, dates, causes, and consequences. Instead of rereading about the French Revolution, ask yourself, what were the main causes? Or what were the immediate effects of the Reign of Terror?
So, it's about asking yourself questions that require you to pull information out, rather than just recognizing it. Rereading is like looking at a map and saying, I recognize that road. Active recall is like trying to draw that road from memory on a blank piece of paper. You really have to know it to draw it.
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa. It highlights a crucial difference. Rereading uses recognition memory, where the answer is right there. But for true learning and long-term retention, you need recall memory, the ability to retrieve information when it's not present.
And this sounds like it applies to almost any subject. Whether it's vocabulary in a new language, scientific terminology, historical figures, or even concepts in physics.
Exactly. For learning a new language, instead of staring at French words and English translations, try covering the translations and attempting to recall them. For scientific terms like mitochondria, ask yourself, what is the primary function of mitochondria in a cell?
So, to recap our active recall discussion, we define active recall as retrieving information from memory without looking at the source. It's more effortful than rereading, but this desirable difficulty strengthens memory. We can implement it through flashcards, self-quizzing, summarizing, and creating our own questions.
You've got it. The beauty of active recall is that it provides instant feedback. When you can't recall something, you know what you need to study more. This is far more efficient than spending hours rereading material you already know. It allows you to target your study efforts precisely where they're needed.
That efficiency is so appealing. It feels like you're making every study minute count.
It absolutely does. Active recall is foundational because it trains your brain to become a retrieval machine. It's about testing yourself, challenging yourself, and forcing your brain to work for the information.
So, to sum up for our listeners, ditch the endless rereading, embrace the brain workout of active recall. Ask yourself questions, try to answer them from memory, and learn what you don't know. Your brain will thank you for it.
Indeed, it will. Next episode, we'll build on this by exploring spaced repetition, another powerful technique that works hand in hand with active recall to help you beat forgetting before it starts.
Next episode, spaced repetition, beat forgetting before it starts.
Welcome back to Learn Faster, Remember More. Last time, we dove deep into active recall. Today, we're tackling another cornerstone, spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition. It sounds like a crucial technique for making sure information sticks. I'm curious to hear how it works.
It is absolutely crucial. Lisa, it's all about fighting forgetting. Have you ever felt like you study something intensely, only to have it vanish a few days later?
Oh, absolutely. It's so frustrating. You think you've got it, and then poof, gone.
Exactly. A German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus did groundbreaking research on memory. He discovered what we call the forgetting curve.
The forgetting curve. That sounds ominous.
Understanding is the first step to beating it. Ebbinghaus found we forget information rapidly at first, then the rate slows. If you learn something today, you'll forget a significant portion within a day or two without review. It's a steep drop-off initially.
So, that explains that feeling of information slipping away. It's like a natural decay of our memories.
Precisely. Now, spaced repetition is our superhero. Instead of cramming, you review material at strategically increasing intervals. So, you might review something again a day later, then a few days later, then a week, then 2 weeks, and so on.
So, you're re-engaging with the material just as you're about to forget it. It's like reinforcing a memory before it fades.
That's a fantastic way to put it, Lisa. You're intervening at the optimal moment to strengthen the memory. Think of your memory like a path through a forest. Spaced repetition is like regularly walking that path, making it wider and clearer every time.
I love that analogy. It makes it so much more intuitive. So, the key isn't just reviewing, but when you review.
Exactly. The magic of spaced repetition is that the intervals between reviews get longer over time. The more you successfully recall information, the more robust your memory becomes. This saves you time as you're not constantly relearning things you almost know.
That sounds incredibly efficient. How do we implement this?
Many people use flashcards. You can do this manually. Alternatively, there are excellent digital flashcard applications, often called spaced repetition software or SRS. Popular examples include Anki and Quizlet. These programs use algorithms to automatically schedule your review sessions based on how well you remember each piece of information.
So, it's like a personalized learning schedule that adapts to you. That's brilliant. This sounds like it works hand in hand with active recall, doesn't it?
It truly does. Active recall is how you practice retrieving information, and spaced repetition is when you practice that retrieval. They form an incredibly potent combination for long-term retention.
So, when using these digital tools, you create a flashcard with a question on one side and the answer on the other, and the software tells you when to review it. When you review, you actively recall the answer before flipping it over.
Exactly. You might have a flashcard asking, "What is the capital of France?" You try to recall it. Based on how easy or difficult it was, you tell the software, and it schedules your next review. It's remarkably effective for memorizing facts, vocabulary, dates, or any information that benefits from consistent recall.
This is going to be a game changer for studying anything from languages to history. The key is consistency, right? You have to show up for your review sessions.
Consistency is absolutely vital. Even 10 to 15 minutes of spaced repetition review each day can make an enormous difference. It's about making it a habit. Remember, the goal is to genuinely try and recall the information before checking the answer. That act of struggling and retrieving is where the learning happens.
So, to recap, we've learned about the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, that natural tendency to forget information rapidly at first. Spaced repetition combats this by having us review information at strategically increasing intervals. This makes our memories more robust and easier to access over time. Digital tools like SRS flashcard apps can automate this scheduling, making it incredibly efficient. And when combined with active recall, spaced repetition becomes a super-powered strategy for long-term learning.
You've nailed it, Lisa. Spaced repetition isn't about cramming. It's about smart, consistent engagement with material over time. It's about building lasting knowledge.
Fantastic. I'm already thinking about how I can integrate this into my own learning.
And that's the spirit. Next time, we'll explore another powerful technique that can deepen your understanding: interleaving.
Interleaving. Sounds like another one to look forward to. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back. Last time we covered spaced repetition. Now, let's tackle interleaving.
Interleaving. That sounds like mixing things up, right? Like mixing up your socks in the laundry?
A bit like that, but with a much more beneficial outcome for your brain. Think of it this way. Up to now, we've often been taught in what's called block practice. You might study chapter 1 of a math book for hours, then chapter 2, then chapter 3, or you practice just one type of piano chord repeatedly. This approach feels productive, and you can often perform well immediately after.
Right.
You get really good at that one specific thing before moving on. It feels comfortable.
Exactly. It feels comfortable. But here's the catch. That comfort can sometimes be a mirage. Block practice often leads to a superficial understanding. You know how to solve that specific type of problem because you've done it so many times in a row that your brain has kind of memorized the steps for that isolated task. But can you recall those steps when faced with a different but related problem? Can you distinguish between similar but distinct concepts? That's where interleaving shines.
So, instead of doing all of chapter 1, then all of chapter 2, interleaving means mixing problems from chapter 1 and chapter 2, and maybe even chapter 3, all in the same study session?
Precisely. Or, if you're learning a language, instead of drilling only German verb conjugations for an hour, you might switch between German verb conjugations, a bit of Spanish vocabulary, and then perhaps a French grammar rule. Or in math, mixing problems involving addition, subtraction, and multiplication, rather than doing 50 addition problems and then 50 subtraction problems.
That sounds harder. Wouldn't it be more confusing? You'd keep having to switch gears in your brain.
It absolutely feels harder, and that's a really important point, Lisa. Interleaving often feels less productive in the short term. You might not see the same immediate gains in performance as you do with block practice. In fact, during your study session, you might feel like you're not learning as effectively. It can be frustrating.
Oh, so it's that same feeling we talked about with active recall and spaced repetition, the feeling that it's difficult, but that's actually a good sign?
You got it. That feeling of difficulty is a strong indicator that your brain is engaged in deeper processing. When you interleave, you're forcing your brain to work harder to retrieve the correct strategy or information for each problem or concept you encounter. You have to figure out, which of these tools do I need for this specific situation?
So, it helps you differentiate between similar things? Like, if I'm studying geometry and geometry shapes, and I mix in a few algebra problems, my brain has to really focus to remember which formulas apply to which topic?
That's a perfect example. Let's say you're studying different types of triangles. You might learn about equilateral triangles, isosceles triangles, and right triangles. With block practice, you might do several problems entirely about equilateral triangles, then several about isosceles, and so on. When you interleave, you get a mixed set. One problem might be find a missing angle in this isosceles triangle, immediately followed by, is this a right triangle? And then calculate the area of this equilateral triangle.
And then, because they're all mixed up, I can't just apply the same rule to every single one. I have to pause for a second and identify the type of triangle before I know what to do.
Exactly. You're not just applying a learned procedure. You're engaging in diagnostic reasoning. You're practicing identifying the core characteristics of each problem or concept, and then selecting the appropriate solution strategy. This ability to discriminate between similar concepts is crucial for true understanding and flexible application of knowledge. It helps build what researchers call conceptual understanding, not just memorization.
So, interleaving isn't about covering more material, it's about covering it better and making sure you can actually use what you've learned in different contexts.
Precisely. It's about building flexible knowledge. Think of it like a musician practicing. A block practice might be playing a single piece of music perfectly over and over. Interleaving might be practicing scales, then a difficult passage from one piece, then a different rhythm exercise, then a melody from another piece. This helps the musician become more adaptable. They can sight read better, improvise more easily, and tackle new music with greater confidence because they've trained their brain to switch between different musical concepts quickly and effectively.
That makes so much sense. It's like training your brain to be a mental juggler instead of just a specialist in one area.
A great analogy, and the benefits extend beyond just academic subjects. It's useful for learning skills too. Imagine learning to differentiate between various bird songs. Instead of listening to 10 minutes of robin songs, then 10 minutes of blue jay songs. Interleaving would involve listening to short clips of many different birds, forcing you to quickly identify each one.
So, how do you actually implement this? If I'm studying for a test that covers multiple chapters, should I just jump around randomly?
The key is that the topics should be related, but distinct. You wouldn't typically interleave calculus with 16th century French poetry, unless you were specifically studying the intersection of those two fields. For subjects like math, science, or even learning a new musical instrument, you want to interleave problems or concept from different units within the same subject. So, if you're studying algebra, it's great to mix linear equations, quadratic equations, and systems of equations in one study session. Or if you're learning a new software program, you might switch between using its text editing features, its image manipulation tools, and its file management functions.
Okay, so the topics need to be related. And it's about mixing different types of problems or concepts within those related topics. What about when you're reviewing material from a few weeks ago? Should you still interleave that with current material?
Absolutely. This is where interleaving really combines its strength with spaced repetition. Remember how we said spaced repetition is about when you review? Interleaving is about how you review. So when you're reviewing material from past weeks, instead of doing a block of review for week 1, then a block for week 2, you'd interleave them. You might pull a problem from week 1, then one from week 3, then another from week 2, and so on. This not only strengthens your memory through retrieval, but it also forces you to constantly reevaluate which knowledge applies, preventing you from just falling back into familiar patterns.
So it's not just about recalling information, but recalling the right information and knowing how to use it. It sounds like interleaving is really about building robust, flexible understanding.
That's the essence of it. It's about moving beyond rote memorization to a deeper, more adaptable form of knowledge. While it can feel more challenging during the learning phase, the long-term retention and ability to apply what you've learned in new and diverse situations are significantly improved. So, don't shy away from that feeling of struggle. Embrace it. It means your brain is building new, strong connections.
It's that trade-off between short-term, comfortable learning and long-term, powerful understanding. Interleaving helps you make that jump.
Exactly. So, to recap what we've covered today, we started by contrasting block practice, which feels comfortable and leads to immediate gains with interleaving. Interleaving involves mixing study of different but related topics or problem types within a single study session. This may feel harder in the moment, but it forces your brain to engage in deeper processing, helping you differentiate between similar concepts and choose the correct solution strategies. It leads to more flexible and durable knowledge, crucial for applying what you learn in real-world situations. Remember, that feeling of difficulty during interleaving is a sign of effective learning.
So, next time we're studying, instead of drilling one topic until we're experts, we should deliberately mix things up. Test ourselves on different kinds of problems from related areas. It feels harder, but it's how we get smarter.
You nailed it. And this leads us perfectly into our next topic, which is all about making knowledge truly your own, elaboration and explanation. We'll explore how explaining concepts in your own words and connecting them to what you already know can supercharge your learning.
That sounds fascinating. Join us for episode 5, Elaboration and Explanation, Making Knowledge Your Own.
Thanks for listening. back to learn faster, remember more. We're diving into elaboration and explanation.
How do we make knowledge truly our own, Alex?
Elaboration means going deeper. Connect new facts to what you already know, asking why and how. It's building a network of understanding.
So it's about meaningful processing, not just memorizing.
Exactly. Explanation is key here. Putting concepts into your own words shows true understanding. It forces you to unpack ideas.
What are some practical ways to practice this?
Ask yourself why and how questions about the material. For photosynthesis, why do plants need sunlight? How does carbon dioxide get into leaves?
That makes the information relational, not just isolated facts.
Precisely. Imagine teaching a friend. You'll naturally simplify and use analogies. That's active elaboration.
I do that. Talking through a complex idea aloud clarifies my thinking.
That's elaboration in action. Another way is drawing parallels. Compare a computer's processing unit to your brain.
We create mental bridges between new knowledge and existing frameworks. That must make it more memorable.
Absolutely. New information gets hooked into your existing knowledge. Understanding how it fits is true, lasting learning.
This reminds me of active recall. Elaboration builds on that by asking us to do something with recalled information.
You've got it. Active recall pulls information out. Elaboration and explanation build rich connections around it, making knowledge more robust.
Can you give another example? Let's say we're learning about a historical event.
Imagine learning about the fall of the Roman Empire. Instead of just dates, ask, what social and economic factors contributed? How did military changes play a role? Connect this to other periods of decline or modern challenges.
That makes history much more dynamic and relevant, with transferable principles.
Exactly. Explaining why these factors were important solidifies understanding and reveals relationships. So, elaboration is about digging deeper, connecting new information to what you already know, and asking why and how. It makes learning richer and more meaningful.
And explanation means putting concepts into your own words, like translating them into your personal language. We do this by asking probing questions, teaching others, and drawing parallels.
That's a perfect summary. It's actively engaging with material, not just passively absorbing it. You're building understanding, creating a robust network of knowledge much more resistant to forgetting. The goal is to deeply understand, not just to know.
And this understanding allows us to apply knowledge in new situations, moving beyond rote memorization to true growth.
Indeed. So, in your study sessions, stop. Think. Ask questions. Try to explain it. Connect it. You'll retain much more, and your comprehension will deepen.
We've learned how to go beyond the surface and truly make knowledge our own through elaboration and explanation.
Next episode, we'll be exploring concrete examples and how they act as powerful anchors for abstract ideas.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome back. Last time, we covered elaborating and explaining concepts. Today, we're diving into concrete examples.
We've discussed active recall, spaced repetition, interleaving, and elaboration. Now, how do we make these abstract ideas real in our minds? This is where concrete examples come in.
Our brains are great at remembering specific stories, images, and tangible things. Abstract concepts can feel like trying to grasp smoke, slippery, and hard to hold on to.
So, a concrete example is like a hook for that slippery abstract idea?
Precisely. A concrete example is a specific, real-world instance of an abstract concept. It grounds the vague or theoretical, making it relatable and easier to process.
That's like building a bridge from the world of ideas to the world of things I can picture or experience.
Perfect analogy. Let's say you're learning about gravity. The abstract idea is that objects with mass attract each other. You can read the definition, but it might not fully click.
Right.
It's just words.
But then you think of an apple falling from a tree. Suddenly, gravity isn't just a word. It's a visible, understandable event. You can picture it, feel that pull.
Or learn about supply and demand. The abstract concept is how product availability and desire affect price.
And a concrete example? Think about a popular game console released during the holidays. Demand is sky high, supply is limited. What happens to the price? It's high, or the consoles sell out instantly.
And months later, production ramps up, the initial frenzy dies down. Supply might increase, demand decrease. The price could stabilize or drop. That's a concrete situation illustrating supply and demand.
It truly does. Actively seeking or creating concrete examples anchors information in your memory.
How do we do that systematically? Sometimes, examples aren't obvious.
Great question. First, when reading or listening, find examples the speaker provides. Analyze them. How does this example illustrate the concept?
So, not just receiving the example, but actively connecting it.
Exactly. Now, what if there are no examples given? That's where you become the creator. Ask yourself, what's a real-world situation where this idea plays out?
And if that's still tough, can we draw from our own experiences?
Absolutely. Your personal experiences are gold mines. Think about a time you felt frustration. That's a concrete instance of the abstract concept of frustration. Every time you learn about frustration, link it back to that personal experience.
So, it's about finding examples out there and in here.
Precisely. And you can use analogies. Remember how we said analogies are bridges? They connect something new and abstract to something familiar and concrete. Explaining computer memory, you might use the analogy of a filing cabinet.
Yes.
The abstract concept is digital information storage, and the concrete analogy is a physical filing cabinet where you store documents.
And it works brilliantly. You can picture opening drawers, labeling them, retrieving files. This demystifies how your computer stores information. Analogies are powerful for generating concrete examples.
So, for concrete examples, actively look for them in learning materials, create them from real-world scenarios or personal experiences, and use analogies to bridge the gap between abstract and familiar.
You've nailed it, Lisa. The benefit is profound. Your understanding becomes deeper. It's not just memorizing a definition, it's understanding how it functions in reality. This makes information more flexible and applicable.
And because it's relatable and memorable, it's retained long-term. It's like having sticky notes all over your brain, but instead of paper squares, they're rich, vivid instances.
This is incredibly helpful for theoretical subjects like philosophy, advanced mathematics, or complex psychological theories. Without concrete examples, they remain impenetrable.
It's like learning about cooking by only reading recipes. You know ingredients and steps, but you haven't experienced the sizzle, aroma, or taste. A concrete example is like actually tasting that dish.
Fantastic parallel. The more concrete examples you associate with a concept, the more robust your understanding becomes. You build a network of understanding, not just a single fragile thread.
So, for everyone listening, the challenge this week is to hunt for or create concrete examples for at least 3 abstract concepts you're learning. It could be from a textbook, a lecture, or even a podcast like this one.
And don't be afraid to get creative. Draw pictures, tell stories, act it out in your mind, or relate it to something unexpected. The more vivid and personalized your concrete example, the stronger the learning anchor.
This emphasizes that learning isn't just absorbing information, it's actively engaging with it and making it meaningful. Concrete examples are a key part of that.
They are. They bridge the gap between what we read and what we understand, turning abstract knowledge into tangible wisdom. Mastering concrete examples will significantly boost your comprehension and recall.
So, to sum up, abstract concepts are hard for our brains. Concrete examples, specific real-world instances, anchor these ideas. We find them in materials, create them from scenarios or personal experiences, and use analogies. Grounding abstract ideas with concrete examples builds deeper understanding, improves memory, and makes learning effective and applicable.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. Next time, we'll be exploring dual coding, another powerful technique that uses both words and visuals to supercharge your learning.
Looking forward to it.
Join us then for episode 7. Welcome back to Learn Faster, Remember More. Today, we're diving into a technique that makes learning multidimensional, dual coding.
Dual coding. So, Alex, what exactly is it, and why is it effective for learning?
Dual coding is about using both words and images to represent information. We have different brain systems for processing verbal and visual information, and dual coding engages both simultaneously.
So, it's like giving your brain two different pathways to store the same idea? If I just read something, it uses one pathway. But if I also see or imagine it, it opens up another.
Exactly. Combining words and images creates a richer memory trace. This makes the information much easier to retrieve later and helps you understand it more deeply.
So, how do we do dual coding in practice?
The key is to create visual representations that connect with the verbal information. A classic example is drawing diagrams. When you're studying the water cycle, draw a diagram showing evaporation, condensation, and precipitation with arrows.
So you're not just reading evaporation, you're drawing an arrow pointing up from water to the sky. That paints a picture.
Precisely. Mind maps are another excellent example. You have your central topic and then branches with related ideas. Use different colors, symbols, or sketches to represent concepts. This transforms a linear list into a visually organized web of knowledge.
I found mind maps help me see the bigger picture. I guess that visual organization is the dual coding at work.
Absolutely. For new vocabulary, instead of just writing the word and definition, try drawing an image that represents the meaning. For benevolent, meaning kind, draw a smiley face with little hearts.
That's a great way to make abstract words more tangible. But I'm not an artist.
You don't need to be a professional artist. The act of you creating the image, however simple, is what helps solidify the memory. Even a basic sketch can be incredibly effective. Think of it as a personal shorthand.
So, a doodle is fine?
A doodle is perfect. The more personal the image, the more meaningful it is. Translating verbal information into a visual form forces you to process it more deeply. You have to understand the concept well enough to decide how to represent it visually.
It's like explaining it to yourself visually. Besides diagrams and mind maps, what other ways can we use dual coding?
Consider using visual aids when explaining something. If you're teaching a friend, don't just talk. Grab paper and sketch out a quick diagram. Or use gestures and actions. This engages their dual coding abilities too.
That reminds me of teachers using whiteboards. They're drawing and illustrating, making it easier to follow.
Exactly. This applies when studying independently too. When reading, ask yourself, how can I represent this visually? Jot down a symbolic representation, like a lightning bolt for a sudden idea.
It's like creating your own visual language. You start to develop personal symbols.
Precisely. And dual coding is most effective when the visual element is directly relevant to the verbal information. The visual needs to support and enhance understanding.
Okay, so the image has a purpose, a connection. It's not decoration. It's a tool for deeper processing.
You got it. Some abstract concepts might be harder to visualize directly. In those cases, create a more metaphorical or symbolic visual. To visualize democracy, draw hands reaching together.
That's an interesting point. It requires creativity and understanding of what you're representing.
It does, but it becomes more intuitive over time. Dual coding leads to better comprehension and retention. It helps combat the forgetting curve because you have multiple ways to access the information.
So, to recap, dual coding uses both words and images to learn, leveraging different parts of our brain. Create visual representations like diagrams, mind maps, or sketches that are relevant to the verbal content.
That's a perfect summary. By engaging both verbal and visual pathways, we create stronger memories and a deeper understanding. It's a powerful technique for learning smarter.
It truly is. It makes learning feel less like a chore. I'm excited to try incorporating more of this.
Fantastic. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Next episode, building your lifelong learning system. Welcome back to Learn Faster, Remember More. Today, we're putting it all together.
It sounds like we're moving from understanding the tools to actually building with them. I'm excited to see how active recall, spaced repetition, and interleaving all work hand in hand.
Exactly. Retrieval practice isn't just one technique. It's the act of pulling information out of your brain. Every time you try to remember something without looking, you're practicing retrieval, and this strengthening process makes learning stick.
So, retrieval practice is essentially testing yourself, right? But how do we make sure we're doing it effectively?
The key is to make that retrieval effortful. It shouldn't be easy. This is where active recall comes into play. Instead of passively rereading notes, you're actively trying to bring information to mind.
Like using flashcards, but answering the question from memory before looking.
Precisely. And to make it truly effective, we need to combine this with spaced repetition. Remember, the idea is to space out your retrieval attempts. You shouldn't test yourself immediately after learning, nor wait so long that you've forgotten it.
So, if I learn a concept today, I recall it tomorrow, then a few days later, then a week later?
You've got it. Using a system, digital or manual, helps manage this spacing. The point is, you're revisiting the material at increasing intervals, each time forcing yourself to retrieve it from memory. This combats the natural forgetting curve.
I can see how that would be much more effective than cramming, which doesn't lead to long-term retention.
Absolutely. Now, let's bring in interleaving. Remember how mixing up different subjects or topics during a study session is beneficial.
Yes. Instead of studying all of Chapter 1, then all of Chapter 2, you'd mix questions from both.
Exactly. When you interleave, you're not just retrieving knowledge from one topic. You're retrieving from multiple related topics. This forces your brain to discriminate between different concepts and identify which information is appropriate. It's a more complex retrieval challenge.
Oh, I see. So, when I encounter a problem, I have to first figure out what kind of problem it is, and then retrieve the right knowledge. That's much harder than just retrieving based on a specific topic heading.
That's the beauty of it. It builds a more robust and flexible understanding. Imagine preparing for a math exam covering algebra, geometry, and trigonometry. You wouldn't just do all the algebra problems, then all the geometry, then all the trigonometry.
You'd mix them up. A problem might look like algebra, but then you realize you need trigonometry.
Precisely. You practice retrieval of algebra and trigonometry concepts within the same study period. This is interleaving in action, making your knowledge adaptable.
So, to recap, retrieval practice is pulling knowledge out. Active recall makes it effortful. Spaced repetition spaces out retrieval attempts. And interleaving mixes up the subjects. How do we put all this into practice?
Let's take a student learning biology. They create flashcards for key terms. That's active recall. They use a spaced repetition system to review these flashcards. They might mix in some chemistry and physics concepts into their daily review session. That's interleaving.
So, on Monday, their review might involve recalling biology terms, then a few chemistry equations, then a physics concept, with the system telling them which flashcards to review next.
You're spot on. Now, what about elaboration and explanation?
Elaboration is connecting new information to what you already know, and explanation is teaching it to yourself or others in simpler terms.
Exactly. When you struggle to retrieve information, that's an opportunity for elaboration. Ask yourself why you can't remember it. Can you relate it to a concrete example?
Yes.
Using concrete examples anchors abstract ideas. If I'm trying to recall osmosis in biology, I might think of a raisin plumping up in water. That makes the concept easier to retrieve and explain.
Perfect. And for explanation, after you attempt to retrieve information, try to explain it out loud. If you stumble, that highlights the gaps in your understanding.
So, retrieval practice isn't just about quizzing. It's using that experience to drive deeper learning through elaboration, explanation, and connecting with concrete examples. It's a whole learning cycle.
It really is. And we can't forget dual coding. As you're practicing retrieval, can you visualize the concept? Can you draw a quick diagram? This engagement of verbal and visual channels makes the stored information more accessible.
So, when reviewing flashcards, I can try to sketch a quick diagram, even if the card only has text.
That's a fantastic application. So, let's put it all together into a practical plan. First, identify your learning goals. Second, break down the material. Third, use active recall. Try to answer from memory first. Fourth, implement spaced repetition. Use a system to schedule retrieval attempts. Fifth, interleave your subjects. Mix up topics or problem types. Sixth, when you struggle, use elaboration. Connect it to what you know or find a concrete example. Seventh, explain the concept out loud. And eighth, integrate dual coding. Visualize concepts or create simple diagrams.
That sounds like a comprehensive approach. It's not just about passively absorbing information, but actively engaging with it.
And this framework applies to anyone wanting to learn a new skill, understand a complex topic, or retain information long term.
It sounds like retrieval practice, with these supporting techniques, becomes the engine that drives learning. It's about building genuine understanding and long-term retention.
You are actively constructing your knowledge, making it more resilient to forgetting and more flexible for application. The key takeaway today is that these techniques work synergistically. Retrieval practice is the core activity, and spaced repetition, interleaving, elaboration, explanation, and dual coding are its powerful allies.
So, by consciously practicing pulling information out of our brains and doing so in a spaced, interleaved, and elaborated way, we create a much more durable and usable form of learning. It's about working smarter with our own minds.
Well said, Lisa. We've built from active recall to the integrated system of retrieval practice in action. In our next episode, we'll tackle overcoming learning plateaus and keeping your motivation high. Next episode, overcoming learning plateaus and motivation hurdles. Welcome back. Last time we explored how concrete examples anchor abstract ideas for better recall.
Absolutely, Alex. Vivid mental pictures are so crucial, especially when we think back to dual coding.
They are. And today, we tackle the most frustrating parts of learning, plateaus and motivation dips.
The plateau. It feels like you're trying hard, but nothing's sticking. Or you hit a wall and don't feel like showing up. So relatable.
Exactly. No learning system is immune. But the techniques we've discussed can help push through. When you feel stuck, it often means your current approach isn't stimulating your brain in a new way.
So, a plateau means it's time to adjust our strategy?
Precisely. For plateaus, revisiting core principles like interleaving and retrieval practice is key. Remember interleaving? mixing different subjects or problem types within a study session.
Right.
Instead of 20 math problems of one type, you do a few, switch to a different math concept, or even history before coming back. It trains your brain to discern between problem types and apply the right strategies.
And when you hit a plateau, interleaving forces new brain patterns. If stuck on organic chemistry mechanisms, try interleaving with biochemistry or even a new language. This cognitive shift can dislodge the mental block.
It's like shaking a snow globe to see the flakes fall differently. So for plateaus, we're changing the context or problem types, not just powering through.
Yes, retrieval practice or active recall is also vital. When stuck, instead of rereading, actively recall. Quiz yourself. Explain concepts out loud. This effortful retrieval strengthens neural pathways and reveals understanding gaps.
So, the struggle to pull information out of my brain is what helps me break free from a plateau. The struggle itself is beneficial.
You've got it. It signifies learning. Now, what about motivation? We all have days where starting feels impossible.
Oh, definitely. Sometimes I just stare at my materials and feel apathy.
One powerful tool is reconnecting with your why. Why did you start learning this? What are your long-term goals? Keeping your purpose in mind can reignite the spark.
That's where elaboration comes in, too, isn't it? Understanding why it's important or how it connects to other things we care about.
Exactly. Elaborating on significance makes learning intrinsically motivating. Making knowledge your own, as we discussed, is key. If you can explain why this topic matters in your own words, connecting it to your life or passions, that motivation sticks.
So, instead of I need to study this, it becomes I need to study this because it will help me achieve X, or this connects to my interest in Y.
Precisely. Another strategy, break learning goals into incredibly small, manageable steps. When goals feel overwhelming, procrastination sets in. But if your goal is to read one page, or solve one problem, or review 5 flashcards, it's much easier to start.
That's the power of tiny habits. It's easier to commit to something small, and doing that creates momentum.
It absolutely does. And remember concrete examples? When motivation wanes, it's because concepts feel too abstract. Revisiting or creating relatable examples makes the material feel tangible and engaging. Imagine being stuck on theoretical physics. Finding a real-world phenomenon it explains can suddenly make it exciting.
That makes sense. It brings the abstract into our everyday lives. Even when motivation dips, thinking about how learned concepts can be applied makes them feel more relevant and valuable.
You're seeing the connections, Lisa, and don't underestimate your environment. A cluttered study space can drain motivation. A clean, organized, and pleasant environment boosts the desire to learn. Setting specific times and places for study can create a routine.
So, we're using the principles we've learned to create a more supportive and engaging learning system, even when our internal drive is low. We're using interleaving and retrieval practice for plateaus and reconnecting with our purpose, breaking tasks into smaller steps, and optimizing our environment for motivation.
That's a fantastic summary, Lisa. It's about being proactive and understanding that these challenges are normal. By having these science-backed strategies, we can navigate them effectively.
It empowers us to keep going, even when it feels tough.
Indeed. Next episode, building your personalized learning blueprint, putting all these incredible techniques into practice for a learning journey that's both effective and sustainable. Thanks for listening. Welcome back. Last time we covered overcoming learning plateaus and motivation hurdles. Now let's build your lifelong learning system.
We've spent the last 9 episodes diving deep into powerful, science backed techniques like active recall, spaced repetition, and interleaving. Now, we're going to explore how to weave these strategies into the fabric of your life, moving beyond the classroom and into professional development, hobbies, and personal growth.
Exactly. The key is to move from reactive learning, cramming when you have to proactive learning, consciously building and maintaining your knowledge base. Think of it like building a mental muscle. You wouldn't just go to the gym once and expect to be fit for life, right? You need consistent effort. Our learning strategies are the exercises that keep our minds strong and agile.
I love that analogy. So, let's start with active recall. We know it's incredibly effective for getting information into our long-term memory. How can we apply that outside of textbook questions or flashcards?
Great question. For professional development, imagine you've just attended a workshop or read an in-depth article about a new skill. Instead of just thinking, okay, I understand that, you can put it into practice immediately. Close the book or your notes and try to explain the core concepts out loud, as if you were teaching someone else. What were the three main benefits of this new software? What are the steps in this process? Even better, try to apply it to a real-world problem you're facing at work. That's active recall in action, forcing your brain to retrieve and synthesize the information.
So, it's about actively retrieving and using the information, not just passively rereading it. I can see how that would be powerful for on-the-job training or learning a new software. What about something like a new hobby, like learning a musical instrument?
This is where it gets really fun. With a musical instrument, active recall can mean trying to play a piece from memory, note for note, without looking at the sheet music. Or, if you're learning chords, instead of just looking at a chart, try to recall them from memory and play them in different sequences. You're actively pulling that musical knowledge from your brain. It's that struggle, that retrieval effort, that solidifies the learning.
That makes so much sense. It's about making your brain work to access the information. Now, how do we integrate spaced repetition into this lifelong learning system? Because remembering to review things at the right intervals can feel like a challenge.
Spaced repetition is the backbone of long-term retention. Think of it as scheduling regular check-ins with your knowledge. For professional skills, this might mean setting calendar reminders to revisit key concepts every few weeks or months. For example, if you've learned a new coding language or a financial modeling technique, schedule review sessions. Don't wait until you need it. Revisit it while it's still relatively fresh. Over time, the intervals between reviews will lengthen significantly.
So, instead of cramming before a big project, you're doing consistent, shorter review sessions that spread out over time. That sounds much more manageable and effective for retaining complex information. What about something creative, like learning to paint?
For painting, spaced repetition might involve revisiting basic techniques. Perhaps you practice drawing fundamental shapes daily or weekly, where you revisit color theory principles every month. It's about reinforcing the foundational elements so that your more complex work builds on a very solid base. You're not just learning a new brushstroke, you're continuously reinforcing the underlying skills.
And what about interleaving? That seemed like such a powerful way to prevent getting stuck in a rut and to build deeper understanding by looking at things from different angles. How does that translate to lifelong learning?
Interleaving is fantastic for building flexibility and problem-solving skills, which are crucial in any field. In a professional context, if you're learning multiple software packages for your job, don't isolate your learning. Spend some time on one, then switch to another, then come back. This forces your brain to constantly switch gears and recognize patterns across different tools. You start to see how concepts in one tool might apply or differ in another.
So, instead of mastering one thing before moving to the next, you're practicing and switching between related skills. That sounds like it would really accelerate your ability to adapt to new challenges.
Precisely. And for hobbies, interleaving can make practice much more engaging and effective. If you're learning different genres of music, instead of practicing all of one genre at a time, mix it up. Play a classical piece, then a jazz improvisation, then a folk song. Your brain has to adapt its approach each time, leading to broader musical understanding and proficiency.
It's like cross-training for your brain. You're building a more robust and adaptable skill set. So, to recap, we're talking about actively recalling information, spacing out our review sessions, and interleaving different skills or topics. We're essentially creating a consistent, integrated learning habit.
Exactly. And to make this sustainable, we need to think about building systems. This means having dedicated tools and routines. For active recall, this could be a simple notebook where you jot down questions to answer later, or using flashcard apps with built-in spaced repetition. For spaced repetition, many digital tools can manage the scheduling for you. The key is to reduce the friction to access these techniques.
Reducing friction is so important. If it's too much effort to implement the technique, we'll just fall back into our old habits. What about motivation? We touched on this briefly in a previous episode, but how do we keep momentum going with lifelong learning?
Motivation often follows action. When you start actively using these techniques, you'll see results, you'll remember more, you'll feel more competent, and that success breeds further motivation. It's also about finding what you want to learn. Connect your learning to your passions, your career goals, or things that simply spark your curiosity. And definitely celebrate your progress. Acknowledge when you've mastered something new or when you recall information that you thought you'd forgotten.
That's a great point. Making learning a positive experience rather than a chore is crucial. And by building these systems, we're not just learning for today, we're building a capability for the future. We're becoming individuals who can adapt and thrive in an ever-changing world.
Indeed, this isn't about mastering a set curriculum for a test. It's about cultivating a mindset and a set of habits that will allow you to learn anything you set your mind to throughout your entire life. Whether it's a new professional skill, a fascinating historical period, or a creative pursuit, your lifelong learning system will be your most valuable asset.
So, to summarize, we've discussed how to apply active recall by testing ourselves and teaching others, how to use spaced repetition by scheduling regular reviews, and how to employ interleaving by mixing related skills and topics. By integrating these methods into our daily lives and professional development, we create a robust, sustainable system for continuous learning. This is about making learning a natural, ongoing part of who we are.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. You've equipped yourself with the tools. Now, it's time to build your system, experiment, and discover the incredible power of becoming a lifelong learner. Next episode, the future of learning, adapting and evolving your techniques. Welcome back to Learn Faster, Remember More. Last time we explored how to build a robust lifelong learning system.
Right, Alex? We learned that lifelong learning isn't just about acquiring new skills, but about continuously refining how we learn them. It's about creating a personal process that works.
Exactly. And now, as we approach the end of our series, it feels like the perfect time to look ahead. Today, in episode 11, we're diving into the future of learning, adapting and evolving your techniques. This is all about staying agile in a world that's constantly changing.
That sounds crucial, because what works today might not be the most effective way to learn something completely new tomorrow, right?
Precisely. Think about it. We've covered active recall, spaced repetition, interleaving, elaboration, concrete examples, and dual coding. These are powerful tools. But the future of learning isn't just about applying these tools perfectly every time. It's about knowing when and how to adapt them.
So, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, even with these science-backed methods?
Not entirely. The core principles remain, but their application can and should evolve. Let's start with adapting to new types of information. Imagine you've mastered learning historical facts using spaced repetition. Your brain is really good at retrieving those dates and events. But now you need to learn a complex, new software program.
Ah, that's a different beast. Software involves doing, not just remembering facts.
It does. So, how might you adapt spaced repetition? Instead of just recalling facts about the software, you'd focus on practicing specific functions at spaced intervals. You might say to yourself, okay, I learned how to create a new document yesterday. Today, I'll practice saving it, and I'll revisit creating a new document tomorrow. The principle of revisiting is still there, but the what you revisit has changed.
That makes sense. Spaced repetition for a process, not just information. What about interleaving? We learned it's great for mixing subjects to avoid confusing similar concepts. How does that adapt?
Interleaving is fantastic for subjects that build on each other, like math or music theory. But when you're learning a new, unrelated skill, say learning to play the guitar and trying to pick up basic coding at the same time, you might need a different approach. True interleaving might not be about swapping between scales and code syntax because they're too different.
So, you dedicate separate times for each, but still consciously switch between them to let your brain rest and reset?
Exactly. It's about recognizing when true interleaving, mixing similar but distinct concepts, is beneficial, and when block practice for a specific skill, followed by a break, and then switching to the other completely different skill might be more effective. The key is mindful switching and giving your brain different challenges. You're still avoiding burnout and mental fatigue, but the mix might be broader.
And elaboration? We talked about explaining things in our own words. Does that change when the subject matter is highly technical or abstract?
That's where elaboration gets really interesting. When you're learning complex physics or advanced philosophy, your own words might still be quite technical. But the act of formulating that explanation forces you to connect the dots. You might need to create more elaborate analogies or mental models. Remember our example of picturing memory as a filing cabinet? For a very complex topic, that filing cabinet might need to be a whole library with specific cataloging systems.
So, the depth of elaboration might increase, and you might have to work harder to find truly relatable metaphors.
Yes, and this leads to another crucial aspect of future learning, embracing complexity and dealing with ambiguity. The world isn't always neat and tidy. Sometimes, the information you encounter won't fit perfectly into your existing mental models. This is where being adaptable becomes really important.
How do you recommend someone adapts to that kind of ambiguity?
It starts with a growth mindset. Instead of thinking, I don't understand this, so it must be wrong or too hard, you shift to this is new and challenging. So how can I break it down and build understanding? It involves being comfortable with not having all the answers immediately. It means being willing to experiment.
Experimenting with learning techniques?
Precisely. You might try a new way of taking notes, or a different software tool for spaced repetition, or even simply changing the time of day you study. This is also where staying curious becomes your superpower. The landscape of knowledge is always shifting. New discoveries are made, new technologies emerge, and new ways of thinking develop.
So, it's about actively seeking out new information and new ways of learning, not just waiting for them to happen to you.
Absolutely. This also means paying attention to the evolving landscape of learning itself. Think about artificial intelligence. AI tools are already changing how we access information and even how we create content. How will learners use AI to enhance their active recall, for instance? Perhaps AI can generate practice questions tailored to your specific weaknesses.
That's fascinating and a little daunting. It feels like learning how to learn is going to become an even more prominent skill.
It already is, Lisa, and I believe the ability to adapt your learning techniques will be a defining characteristic of successful learners in the future. It's about being a lifelong student, yes, but more importantly, it's about being a flexible lifelong student.
So, to recap what we've discussed today on adapting and evolving our learning, we need to be flexible with our techniques like spaced repetition and interleaving, tailoring them to the specific type of information or skill we're learning. We also need to embrace complexity, stay curious, and be open to new tools and methods that emerge as the world and learning itself evolves.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. It's about moving beyond simply applying the techniques and instead becoming a master strategist of your own learning journey. It's about continuous improvement, not just of the knowledge you gain, but of the very process by which you gain it. This journey of adapting and evolving is what will keep your learning relevant and effective throughout your life.
It's a powerful thought to end on as we head into our final episode.
In our next episode, we'll be pulling everything together. We'll focus on your personalized learning blueprint, putting it all into practice. We'll help you consolidate all the strategies we've covered into a concrete, actionable plan that you can start using immediately.
Excellent. I can't wait for that.
Thanks for listening. We're putting powerful techniques into action to create your very own personalized learning blueprint.
That's right, Alex. We've covered how to recall information, beat forgetting, mix up subjects, explain concepts, use examples, combine words and visuals, and tackle motivation. Now, it's time to figure out how you can best use all of this. Think of it as building your ultimate learning toolkit, tailored just for you.
Exactly. The first step to building your personalized plan is reflection. You need to look at how you currently learn and identify what's working and what isn't. So, Lisa, if you were starting from scratch, what's the first question you'd ask yourself about your learning habits?
I'd probably ask, what subjects or skills do I find myself struggling with the most? Or perhaps, when do I feel like I'm learning best? Is it when I'm alone in a group listening or doing something hands-on? Understanding those individual differences is key, isn't it?
Absolutely. Those are fantastic starting points. We all have different preferences and circumstances. Some people thrive with a quiet study session, while others might benefit from discussing concepts with a peer. So, take a moment to consider your preferred learning environment. Are you a morning person or a night owl when it comes to focused learning? Do you learn better by reading, listening, or doing? There's no single right answer, and acknowledging your natural tendencies is a huge advantage.
And it's not just about where or when we learn, but also how we engage with the material. Remember how we talked about actively testing yourself versus just passively rereading notes? Many people think they're studying effectively by rereading, but it's often an illusion of knowledge. So, a good question to ask is, am I actively testing myself or just looking at the text?
That's a crucial distinction, Lisa. Active recall is about the struggle to retrieve information. It feels harder, but it builds stronger memories. So, your blueprint should include specific strategies for active recall. For instance, after reading a chapter, can you close the book and try to summarize the main points? Or can you create flashcards with questions on one side and answers on the other? Remember, the goal is to pull information out of your brain, not just push it in.
And that ties perfectly into spaced repetition. Once you've actively recalled something, you need to revisit it at increasing intervals. So, my question would be, how can I schedule my review sessions to prevent forgetting? It's not about cramming, it's about spacing out those retrieval attempts.
Exactly. For your blueprint, you might decide to use a digital spaced repetition tool, or simply mark dates in a calendar for reviewing notes. The key is consistency. Perhaps you commit to reviewing new material the next day, then 3 days later, then a week later, and so on. This builds a robust memory over time, making that information much more accessible when you need it.
Then there's interleaving, which we found fascinating. It's the opposite of blocking, studying one subject for hours until you master it. Interleaving means mixing different subjects or topics within a single study session. So, the question here is, how can I strategically mix up my practice or study topics?
When building your blueprint for interleaving, think about variety. If you're studying math, instead of doing all the addition problems, then all the subtraction, mix them up. Or if you're preparing for different subjects on exam, spend a portion of your time on history, then switch to science, then maybe literature. This helps your brain differentiate between problem types and apply the correct strategies, which is incredibly valuable for exams and real-world problem solving.
And how do we make sure we truly understand and don't just memorize? That's where explanation and concrete examples come in. Elaboration is about explaining concepts in your own words, connecting them to what you already know. So the question is, am I explaining this to myself or someone else? And am I connecting it to my existing knowledge?
Yes, and concrete examples are the anchors for those explanations. Imagine trying to explain the concept of gravity without any real-world examples. It's abstract and hard to grasp. So, in your blueprint, actively look for opportunities to create your own examples. If you're learning about economics, think about how a particular principle plays out in your own spending habits or in the news. For abstract ideas, ask yourself, what's a real-world situation that illustrates this concept?
Dual coding is another fantastic tool for deeper understanding. It's about combining words and visuals. So, a key question for your blueprint is, how can I represent this information both visually and verbally? This could mean drawing diagrams, creating mind maps, sketching key ideas, or even finding relevant images that illustrate a point.
Right? If you're studying biology, don't just read the descriptions of cell organelles, draw them. If you're learning about historical events, create a timeline with key dates and brief descriptions. The more connections your brain makes between different types of information, the stronger the memory becomes.
Now, Alex, we've talked a lot about techniques. But what about the inevitable hurdles, like motivation and learning plateaus? How do we build that into our blueprint?
That's where setting realistic goals and building systems comes in. Your blueprint needs a plan for maintaining motivation. This could involve breaking down large learning tasks into smaller, manageable steps. Celebrate small wins along the way. And when you hit a plateau, don't get discouraged. Remember our discussion on overcoming challenges? It might be time to switch up your techniques, take a break, or focus on a different aspect of the subject. Your blueprint should acknowledge that learning isn't always linear.
So, to recap what we've discussed for building a personalized learning blueprint. First, self-reflection. Understand your learning preferences, environment, and current habits. Ask yourself, when, where, and how do I learn best? Second, active retrieval. Integrate consistent testing of yourself, not just rereading. Ask, am I actively pulling information out? Third, strategic spacing. Plan review sessions at increasing intervals to combat forgetting. Ask, how can I schedule regular, spaced out reviews? Fourth, interleaving practice. Mix up your subjects or problem types within study sessions. Ask, how can I introduce variety into my practice? Fifth, elaboration and examples. Explain concepts in your own words and connect them to concrete, real-world situations. Ask, can I explain this simply and illustrate it with an example? Sixth, dual coding. Combine words with visuals like diagrams or sketches. Ask, how can I represent this information visually and verbally? And seventh, motivation and resilience. Plan for maintaining momentum and overcoming challenges. Ask, how will I stay motivated and handle plateaus?
That's a fantastic summary. Lisa, your personalized learning blueprint isn't a rigid document. It's a living guide. As you learn more about yourself, and as your needs change, you can adapt and refine it. The science-backed techniques we've discussed are powerful tools, but their real power lies in how you integrate them into your unique learning journey.
It's about making learning an intentional, strategic process rather than a passive one. By actively designing your study habits around these principles, you're not just learning more effectively, you're becoming a more adaptable and lifelong learner.
Indeed, this journey of learning smarter rather than just harder is ongoing. We hope this series has equipped you with the knowledge and the motivation to build your own personalized learning blueprint and to continue evolving your techniques.
It's been a fantastic ride, Alex, exploring these powerful learning strategies with everyone.
It absolutely has. So go forth, experiment, reflect, and build that blueprint. Thank you for joining us on Learn Faster, Remember More. We hope you found this series invaluable. Thanks for listening to the series.